What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns with you, recording on a Thursday as we get deep into week 2 of the Bears GM coaching search extravaganza, let's call it.
Day 10. Day 10. If my math is right, I'm not a mathematician. Is that what John Fox once said? No, I'm trying to put that out of the memory right now, but it is day 10 by my counting in my calendar book of the Bears GM coach search, which is simultaneous. Did you know?
Wait a minute, you have a calendar book?
Yes. It almost said heck yes. I merged the words.
I mean, you don't just do that in your phone?
I got too much in it. Too many apps.
Well, the calendar app is usually like the first one that's in the upper left corner. It's just like right there. It's really easy to open.
I'm old school, and there's nothing wrong with being old school here, Adam Hoge. You know, like
okay.
it's
right.
This little thing here.
Yep.
It's good to see it. I actually compare and contrast what's going on in the phone with this. Anyway, jerk. In 2015, you know who was hired on day 10 of the Bears simultaneous GM coach search?
I believe his name was Ryan Pace.
He was hired on day 10. Day 10 of this search. Doesn't appear anybody's close to being hired in any capacity at this point.
No, not right now. Although we apparently have people dropping out, and we have a head coaching finalist.
Getting closer.
Does the second interview make you a finalist, by the way? It's like there's an automatic assumption that it's like you're a finalist. What if they do a third interview?
They should do third interviews.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I think it means you get to the next round. I don't know if you're a finalist.
I don't think you're a finalist in the Bears operation until you're having dinner with them somewhere. That's what I've learned.
And the wives are there. The wives have to be there, too.
I don't think they're going to do that this year.
Although at that point, you're pretty much hired, I think, when the wives show up.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if we heard the story of, like, the wives were there and the wives just got in a huge fight and they didn't get along and they're like, I guess we can't hire them. Sorry.
That was it. I would love that story. Right?
That would be great.
Oh my gosh. Right. Too much booze served at the table. But, you know what? Stuff like that happens sometimes, I imagine. But that'd be great.
I was a math major. I wasn't, actually, but...
There it is.
All right. So we do have some news to get to. Jahns is writing book reports, so we'll get to that, too. You are actually, like, back in... where'd you go to grade school again?
St. Ed's. Yeah.
St. Ed's. So you got your calendar book that we used to have when we were kids, and you're writing book reports.
They used to call those the old assignment notebook.
Yeah, the assignment notebook. You buy a new one at Office Depot every year.
Oh, I love the assignment notebook. I could go for an assignment notebook. It was very detailed, very easy to write things in.
Well, you had a book report due at about 7 a.m. this morning, and it's on The Athletic, theathletic.com/HogeandJahns, where you can read that. We'll get to that in a second. So a little bit of news from yesterday. A couple of interesting developments, nothing mind-blowing. Let's start with the head coach situation first. So we find out multiple reports that Matt Eberflus has been scheduled for a second interview. A couple things real quick on this. Everyone... I realize, and we've talked about it here on this podcast, we are as skeptical as the word
back, baby.
As we've used of this Bears search because they're the Bears and they screw this up, and that's how it works. That being said, I have no problem whatsoever with them getting a interview scheduled for Monday, a second interview before they have a GM. Let's get one thing straight, and I don't know if you agree with this, John, so tell me if you don't, but I find the head coach hire to be way more important than the GM hire. The coach is the guy who, and actually I believe this was in your book report. I think I read this morning from Bill Polian. The head coach is the guy who sets the culture, who interacts with the players on a daily, hourly basis throughout the season. You know, there's interactions with the GM, but not even on a daily basis. Like, and some GMs don't interact with players. Some do, some don't. So I just think that the head coach hire, ultimately, that's the guy controlling what's happening on game day, during the games, game planning during the week, having a huge influence on wins and losses. Yes, obviously the personnel matters, but I think you got to get the head coach situation right. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily have to hire the head coach first. I'm just saying If you have a candidate that you really, really like, and you want to make sure you don't lose that guy, and you want to say, hey, we're still interested, don't take the Jags job yet. Let's get an interview on the books for Monday for early next week. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Okay. I agree with you, because if we're just going off Bill Polian's book, he called it the most important piece, called the head coach the most important piece. So that's fine. Then don't tell us you want to hire the GM first and that's your preference.
But they haven't hired anyone yet.
That's fair.
They scheduled an interview for 5 days away. Like, it's not like they rushed one, like, oh, we got to get Matt Eberflus in here tomorrow. No, it was like, all right, next week, Monday, let's regroup. We'll talk to you again. Nice job on your first interview. Let's schedule a second. They may have a general manager by Monday, for all we know.
They should try. They should get closer. Doesn't seem like Eberflus is in a rush either. If he wants to get this right, I think he should have a lot of questions for Jaguars. You call them the Jags. Ownership.
And the Bears. I would have a lot of questions about both teams.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You better be as comfortable as can be with the teams you're about to join. You should be asking for 2 or 3 interviews plus dinner, maybe some breakfast, if you're Matt Eberflus or the next Bears head coaching candidate. These two teams have made too many changes over the past decade. You could be next. So ask for that coffee and breakfast. Ask for that steak dinner. Be as comfortable as you can be with your decision. And that applies to Matt Eberflus and every other coaching candidate who reaches that second stage.
Yeah. So
that's my advice for you.
For me?
Not for you. For Matt Eberflus when he listens to this podcast, because you know he will.
Are you offering a steak dinner? Because I'll take it.
Where do you want to
go? Well, you missed our Manny's dinner in Minneapolis.
I did.
So,
and now if you're the Bears, I believe Ditka's is now closed downtown, so you gotta have to go out to Oak Brook. It's not too bad if you want to keep with the historical trend.
Yeah,
or his team history.
That would just be the most Bears thing ever to find out that's where the dinner was at
dinner at Ditka's.
Oh my God. All right, so the other piece of news, Ed Dodds, the Colts assistant GM, says, I'm good, I'm out. What was your reaction to that?
I think he's done this before. That was my initial reaction. And then I had to look it up. Yes, he did do this before. Last year with the Panthers. And previously with the Browns. Was it the Browns?
I don't know.
But he's done this before. Zach Kiefer, my colleague at The Athletic, said Dodds has told him in the past that he's looking for the right situation before he makes this jump. So, sure, you could view it as a criticism because the Bears clearly aren't the right situation for Ed Dodds, but I don't know if that perfect situation exists out there for anybody. But like we just said, you need to be as comfortable as you can be if you're going to choose to work for the Bears, if you're offered that job to be GM or head coach.
Yeah, I mean, a few things on this. If you thought that the Bears were going to interview, what are they up to, 9 GM, 10 GM candidates, whatever it is now, and not one of them was going to back out at some point, that's just not how this thing works. Like, it happens. GMs usually only get one chance. It's not like head coaches that get recycled. Sometimes there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, if you are a young GM, and Ed Dodds is still pretty young, or GM candidate, I should say, you could afford to be picky, and you should be, because you don't want to go somewhere where you think you're going to get fired in 3 or 4 years and then never have a GM job again. I want to remind people, too, that Justin Fields was drafted 11th overall. He wasn't drafted first. He was the 4th quarterback selected. It was not unanimous. There was not a unanimous feeling on Justin Fields. So we don't know how these individual GM candidates feel about the quarterback. It may seem like a great opportunity to us, saying, oh, you get to inherit Justin Fields and you have your quarterback in place. But these guys might not agree with that. And the Bears don't have a first-round pick. So
because of
if
Justin
you don't,
Fields.
Right. So if you don't like the quarterback and you say, oh, I'm taking a job where they don't even have a first-round pick this year, it may not be as attractive of a job as some think it is. Some do. Some people think it's a great job. And if you love Justin Fields, you probably think it's a great job. But we just got to understand that it might not be viewed that way by everyone.
If I'm a GM candidate and I had, say, a high second round grade on Justin Fields and I had questions about him, then I'm not taking this job. Absolutely, I'm not taking this job. I would wait it out and try to find that clean slate opportunity. That clean slate opportunity right now could exist in New York with the Giants.
Yeah, with 2 first-round picks.
With 2 first-round picks. Now, it's not a great year for drafting quarterbacks, but you know what? You can start building around that future quarterback you're going to try to invest in. You want that clean slate. What did John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan get for their first contracts? Like 7-year deals?
Yeah, it was it may have been 6, but I think it was 6, but it was they were longer than usual.
Like 5 years has become almost standard for coaches. Like Nagy got a 5-year deal. I wonder if this is the trend we're going to start seeing, because every front office type would tell you it takes time, especially if you're taking over a new team with a lot of holes that hasn't made the playoffs in a while.
Yeah.
Like if you're taking over the Bears, at least, if I'm a GM, I want 5 years. At least.
Yeah, I would say so. Especially if I'm the GM.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, they usually get one crack at this thing. All right, the other part, let's talk specific. So what I just kind of said applies to it could apply to Ed Dodds. It could apply to, I don't know if it applies to Ed Dodds. I don't know how Ed Dodds feels about Justin Fields. I'm just saying, like, these are things you have to keep in mind. So it can apply to anybody dropping out. Now let's specifically talk about Ed Dodds. So I'll go back to some of my own reporting. From the very start, which I reported right after Ryan Pace was fired, my understanding was Morocco Brown would be a strong candidate for this job. So he is the Colts director of college scouting, who's technically behind Ed Dodds, who's the assistant GM. I was also told Ed Dodds could be a candidate, but it seemed like the more likely candidate was Morocco Brown. And then when I talked to somebody in Indianapolis, it was also told to me that Brown is the better candidate, that he'd be the better fit with the Chicago Bears. Now, some of that may be his history with the Bears that Ed Dodds doesn't have. So I guess what I'm trying to say, Jahns, is like I never really considered Ed Dodds to be that serious of a candidate to begin with. And I'm not necessarily surprised that he backed out, and I don't think the Bears are panicking over this in any way, is what I'm trying to tell you.
They shouldn't. That's why you cast a wider net. I like this wide net. And just in terms of how they've run previous GM searches, refreshing is not the right word, but it seems to be a better process than having this narrow list and working off it. Mm-hmm. Get more opinions, get more feels for different personalities around the league, hear more evaluations about your current team. Better process seems to be in play for the Bears. Now, whether or not they hire the right guy, that remains to be seen. But the process, while a bit elongated, does seem better.
Yeah, and I don't even know that I agree with that it's elongated at this point. Like, it's longer than I guess it has been. But like you said, it's been 10 days.
Yeah, it's just what we're used to. Like, again, like in 2015, Ryan Pace was hired by now. Right now, Ryan Pace is interviewing Todd Bowles up at Hallis Hall. Like, that's what was happening in 2015. This is different.
Again, congrats on the job, Ryan. Todd Bowles is sitting down the hall in a room. He's waiting for you. I don't know what you think about him, but he's here, so can you please go talk to him?
Can you take care of this for us? Thanks. See ya.
We don't know what we're doing. That's why we hired you. Here's Todd Bowles. Oh, by the way, I need you to go to Denver and meet with John Fox. And not technically, John Fox wasn't available yet at that point, but
here's your ticket.
But yeah, he might be, and if he is, you're going to hire him. All right. We have been kind of doing this tour, going through different cities, candidates that are up for these jobs. We went to Indy last week. Earlier this week, we went to Buffalo. Appreciate all the feedback. Seems like a lot of people are enjoying this insight going to these different athletic writers that cover these different teams and know more about these candidates than we do. So we're going to do that again today. And it's time to go to Cleveland. I never thought that we would be going to Cleveland for personnel hires, considering the state of the Cleveland Browns our entire lives. But, they'd probably say the same thing about the Bears. And Champ Kelly is getting interviews around the league. So it happens. But there are a few candidates that we need to talk about that have either currently work for the Browns or have ties to the Cleveland Browns. So there's Glenn Cook, there's Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, and then there's Elliott Wolf, who was just with the Browns recently and now works for the Patriots. So to get the insight on these three general manager candidates who have interviewed with the Bears, Zac Jackson covers the Browns for The Athletic, and we are going to Cleveland to find out more about these guys. All right, let's bring in Zac Jackson, who covers the Cleveland Browns for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at Akron Jackson, which is a sweet Twitter handle. Zac, what's up? Thanks for jumping on with us today.
What would a guy who covers the Browns know about coaching and GM searches? Oh, that's right. I have a PhD. Glad to be here.
Yeah. We made a joke the other day, like, wow, they're really going to the Browns for a lot of these guys. Maybe they should just wait a year and they'll all be available.
Now people would show up at them and fight you here in Cleveland if you said that. But yes, that could be true. It's different. Obviously, the Browns have expectations. They failed to meet them. I think around the league, I think there is, some esteem for their front office, for the administration, for what they're trying to build. This year didn't go well. They're kind of at a crossroads. In terms of the GM candidates, I'm not surprised those guys are getting interviews. I'm really not. They both have backgrounds from before the Browns. They're considered impressive young rising guys with varied backgrounds. Teams are building differently. And like I said, we don't know those guys super well, but right away, Adolfo-Mensah, Cook, even Elliott Wolf, who spent some time in Cleveland. I mean, just in my own talking to people over the back half of the season, they were always going to be, on teams' lists.
Well, let's start with Glenn Cook then, who's the current vice president of player personnel. Seems to be a relatively serious candidate for this Bears job, but what do you know about him? What should we know about him? Why should Bears fans be excited or not excited about Glenn Cook?
Yeah, he's an impressive guy. The Browns have put him out front probably more than some of the other guys. Now, he's been there a little bit longer. He came in with the Dorsey administration. He was promoted. I don't believe he's even 40 years old, but he's been kind of a fast riser. So, he's worked with an analytics-based group. He's obviously has a background as a former player, been involved in college scouting. He was kind of the front man on the Browns drafting a tight end, Harrison Bryant, in the 4th round out of FAU, who's become a nice player. And he's, in the room, as they say. He is probably 3rd or 4th in charge of the football operation here in Cleveland. So he's been involved with all the decisions they've made over the past couple of years. So I think when you look at it, it's the Dorsey group, which is a complete opposite of the current group in charge, and he's been held in high esteem with both of those. So without knowing, what he thinks about certain players or what his preferred methods are, that speaks well because both groups have put him in the room and kind of, promoted him and held his opinion, said that it mattered.
I'm curious, as you cover those structural front office changes, and Dorsey was such a big name around the NFL. You have Glenn Cook working for him. He brings Elliott Wolf with him. I'm just curious, just in terms of maybe some philosophies that have stuck, from the Dorsey era that you see maybe still on the field with the Browns today.
Yeah, well, the Dorsey philosophy was go get the best players. And what happens to them or what they did before here or why they're available in the 4th round because of their rap sheet, who cares? Let's go get them. Let's bring them in, right? Now it's more of an analytics-based front office. And it's hard to say they're making more patient decisions here 48 hours after the Malik McDowell video, right? But they're much more methodical, much more picky in what they would do. I think, Elliott Wolf was second in charge behind Dorsey. Wasn't out front very much. We obviously know his background. The guy's been in draft room since he was a teenager. He was raised as a football scout. Glenn Cook was a player who's been in the scouting business. So, and then when you go to Kwesi, his background is different. He was an Ivy League basketball player. He's come up working mostly on the analytics side. So I think with Glenn Cook specifically, it's his playing background, and then he's been more of a true scout who's ascended to the vice president type role.
So with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, you mentioned his analytics background. He doesn't, unless I'm wrong, he doesn't come off when you start doing the background on him. It doesn't sound like he's like a scout at heart or a guy. And so is that something that should be concerning in a general manager position? No,
I don't think anymore that's the number one concern. Now, obviously, his number 2 and 3 hires would probably be the traditional scouting, but I kind of rambled without answering your previous question. John Dorsey is a scout who just wanted to do wild shit. He didn't care. He was going to trade for Odell Beckham. He was going to go find guys that nobody else would draft. He was going to say, the first thing he said was, bring me real players. And in Cleveland, it was like 60%, oh my gosh, it's offensive. And 40% were like, well, the Browns suck. They were 1-31. Of course, go get some real players. And I think in talking to people now, it's like, okay, John Dorsey was never going to be checked by ownership. John Dorsey was never going to be checked. He hired Freddie Kitchens. That's what's got him fired, right? He drafted Antonio Callaway, who scored a bunch of touchdowns and looked great, and then just kept getting arrested, kept getting in trouble. It didn't work. So I think Wolf and Cook obviously have worked in very different backgrounds than that. Elliot Wolf's next stop was New England, which is the opposite of that, buttoned down, right? So I think it's just in how you structure it. Obviously, when you look at Kwesi, he has a scouting background. He's worked in the front office, around these guys. But it's his upbringing, his first 5 years in the NFL are not on the road. Whereas that's definitely the case with Glenn Cook. And with Elliot Wolf, it's different because his father was a Hall of Fame GM.
Now, Baker Mayfield was a Dorsey pick, right?
Yes, he was. And it was pretty unanimous inside the building. But that was old school scouting. That's the year that Dorsey was fired and wasn't working. He was going and scouting Big 12 games on his own. He got hired in December by the Browns, and he came in knowing he was going to pick Baker Mayfield, but he was very deliberate. It was a secret. He was letting guys get their own opinions, and they ended up making that pick. And now, 4 years later, it's like they didn't even consider Josh Allen. What the hell were they doing? But that was a Dorsey pick all the way, yes.
I'm just curious then, through all this, I don't want to use the word turmoil. That's just what we're used to here in Chicago. With
sure,
we had a certain general manager, Ryan Pace, who selected Mitch Trubisky without really consulting his head coach. So, what are the lessons learned for a Glenn Cook, an Elliot Wolf through the ups and downs of the Browns organization?
Yeah, just speaking for Glenn, who I only know a little bit, he has seen the ups and downs, and he's seen completely different methodologies in how to do it, right? So I don't think if you're talking about 6 or 7 people in the room for 2018, I don't think Glenn was one of them. They made the Baker Mayfield pick. It was almost unanimous. They made the Denzel Ward pick. They kind of bucked the trend. Everybody thought they'd take Bradley Chubb. I think a month before the draft, they thought they'd take Bradley Chubb. They take Denzel Ward. He's a top 5 corner in the league. So, the Browns are very much an analytics-driven front office now, but Glenn sits in the room. Andrew Berry, who has a true football background on his own, sits in the room. I just think it goes to what they believe in terms of team building, and I think Glenn Cook is more, we're going to take the talented guy. And yes, the Browns are on analytics, but they have taken young players in the draft, 21-year-olds, 3-year college players who have remarkable athletic traits, and they're looking down the road. And Glenn's, like I said, he's been involved with both of those.
Do you know why Glenn Cook was kept around, but Elliot Wolf was not?
Well, Elliot Wolf was John Dorsey's number 2. So do I know Elliot, or do I know the actual dynamics enough to say there was a fight or a split? No, but it was pretty clear that Elliot Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith, who were 2 and 3 under Dorsey, were not staying.
Could you see his influence when he was there? We know the Wolf name so well in Chicago because Ron Wolf, he was the architect of those Packers teams that just came through Chicago and did so well. How would you describe his impact on the organization, even though it was so short? And I know he came in with a reputation.
He was the number 2 guy, but he was very much in the background. I think just the times I've been around him, his nature is he's a little more low key. And when you have John Dorsey, and you had Freddie Kitchens for part of that too, right, and you draft Baker Mayfield and you trade for Odell Beckham, there's enough guys in the organization who are out front that Elliott Wolf didn't need to be. So being around Glenn Cook in mostly formal press conference settings, he knows how to command the room. His playing background shines through when he discusses players and methods, but we're talking about a handful of occasions because we have the pandemic that's kept us out of the building. And like I said, Elliott Wolf was hired in February and fired, 21 months later or 23 months later. And that's just kind of been the trend of everything in Cleveland.
All right, Zach. Well, you said you have the PhD in switching administrations and regimes. If you were the Bears, what would you do? Like, let's say that these three guys, Glenn Cook, Kwesi, and Elliott Wolf, were the finalists. Not that they are, but if they were the three finalists, which one would you hire?
Yeah, I'd probably look at Glenn Cook the most. I just think, have I been exposed to him the most? Yes, but I think he's super impressive. I would tell you guys that in December I talked to someone in the league who I trust very much, and he said Elliott Wolf is going to get interviews. Elliott Wolf is going to be a GM soon. So, their backgrounds are different, but they're both around the same age. Their entire lives have been in this business. And, if someone thinks, I think people think Glenn Cook is ready. So I am not in the Bears interviews. I don't know how that's going to go. I think Elliott Wolf's life has been shifted to being ready eventually. I think Glenn Cook over the last 5 or 6 years in the business has shown people that he's ready. I mean, 3 or 4 teams have interviewed him, right? And I think this is his first time around the interview circuit, but if you look at the progression, it matches those of guys who've previously become GMs and done pretty well with it.
One last one for you. We briefly mentioned Andrew Berry, the current man in charge there in Cleveland. I'm just curious, like, his influence on these guys, how would you characterize it? Are there certain, to use the word philosophies again, I know it's only been a couple of years, but just in terms of speaking with him, on and off the record, I'm just curious what type of vibe you get that may be imparted on, Glenn Cook or whatnot.
Well, I think very low-key and cautious. I mean, Andrew Berry is a super intelligent guy, and every time we talk to him, he uses words I've never heard before, right? But
Hoge tries to do the same, but,
he doesn't ever answer a question. Nothing. And it's part of it's like you understand, and then part of it this year, I think through some of the Odell stuff, it's like you guys aren't helping yourselves by not saying anything there. I think Dorsey did more of an intentional / deliberate job to get guys out in front, get them ready for the media, let them talk to the account. I think it was more in the Dorsey way that football came first, football came second. We'll worry about everything else later. I think with Andrew Berry, football comes first, but let's look at the athletic traits. Let's be smart about this. I mean, the Browns pace plastered on the wall, smart, tough, accountable. Again, it sounds like bullshit right now because of the Malik McDowell thing, right? But smart, tough, accountable is the Andrew Berry mantra. And I think when you look at Kwesi on one side kind of leading the analytics part and then Glenn Cook on the other side kind of leading the football part, with Andrew having a background in both but mostly being a football guy, is the way I would explain that.
All right, well, we appreciate the insight, Zach. A lot of good stuff here. I think it probably helps Bears fans get a good idea who these guys are. Again, you can follow Zach on Twitter at Akron Jackson. Covers the Browns on The Athletic. So if you're not subscribed, you should be. theathletic.com/Hoge and Jahns is where to go to subscribe. Zach's also part of the A to Z podcast. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Zach.
Hey, I want to tell you about a product I started using recently called Athletic Greens, which has so many different benefits to you. What are Athletic Greens? Well, with one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging all at the same time. It's so easy to use with just one scoop. You can take it in the morning. You can take it later in the day, whenever you want to. I mix it in with some smoothies sometimes as well. And it's just so easy to use. There's travel packs that you can bring when I'm traveling, so it's not always just something you use at home and then you can't bring it with you on the road. They make it very, very easy to use, and it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, which is great. And look, tons of people take some type of multivitamin. It's important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb, and that's what is in Athletic Greens. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. That's for sure. So right now is a time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into this flu and cold season. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Adams. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Adams, plural, to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
It's winter, which means both football and basketball are in full swing, and for many of us, there's no better way to enjoy the games than by having some skin in the game, which is why BetMGM remains the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic. And as a fan of The Athletic, you can bet $10 to win $150 plus a free 3-month subscription or an extension to your subscription with The Athletic when you bet with BetMGM using our promo code. Just sign up at BetMGM.com and use the promo code TheAthleticPod at checkout to take advantage of the special offer from the king of sports books. That's bet $10 to win $150 plus 3 months free from The Athletic at BetMGM.com using the promo code TheAthleticPod at checkout. New customer offer. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and
Must be
conditions.
21 years of age or older to wager. Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Nevada, and Virginia. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. In Tennessee, call or text the red line at 800-889-9789. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada.
This podcast is brought to you by DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You got one device lets you catch the game live. Another lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone. And you got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings you your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part? There's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package.
All right, Jahns, it seems like Zach thinks Glenn Cook's probably the strongest of the candidates. I somewhat feel the same way, not knowing these guys at all at this point, but just sort of reading the room a little bit and conversations that I think we've all had. It seems like Glenn Cook maybe could be a finalist in this thing. I guess it wouldn't surprise me if he was. He was one of the first guys they interviewed, though. Speaking of days, what is today? The 20th? He interviewed back on the 12th, so it's been a while.
8 days.
Good job. Good job on that one. I appreciate that.
I was a math major. I wasn't actually, but
I don't know. I feel more intrigued by Elliot Wolf, to be honest with you, after talking to Zach.
Really?
I don't know if I just didn't know this, but I didn't know he was Dorsey's number 2 guy down there in Cleveland, or out there east of here in Cleveland. Obviously, we should be familiar with Dorsey. We should be familiar with Wolf because that's the Green Bay Packers tree, right? And Dorsey was such a strong presence in the NFL for so long. But I don't know. I think it's to be hired by Bill Belichick as a scouting consultant. Isn't that just a major, vote of confidence for this guy?
It could be. I don't know Bill Belichick's relationship with Ron Wolf, though. In the connect, sometimes there's just
he did his guy a solid. I
don't know. I'm just throwing that out. It's not like he hired him to be his general manager. He hired him to be a scouting consultant. I mean, the Bears hired Mike Pettin to be a consultant this year. I just, I don't. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not going to read too much into that.
No, I see it as adding value to his organization. You know what? I could be wrong. You could be right. I see it as a benefit. I like that he has different experiences. But you're right. If I had Glenn Cook does stand out to me. I'm just thinking the media. Would there be a media firestorm if the Bears did hire a general manager from like the Browns. The Browns. Like Ryan Pace came from the Saints. He won a Super Bowl.
It would definitely be something held against them the second anything goes wrong. Right? Like, in the same way that it was held against Matt Nagy that he really didn't have any play calling experience and they blew that playoff game. Right?
Matt Nagy, at least just in terms of public perception, I'm talking about. Matt Nagy came from the Chiefs, from the Andy Reid tree. The Andy Reid tree has produced plenty of good head coaches. Now, those guys had different experiences outside of Andy Reid that Matt Nagy did not possess. But at least he was from that Reid tree. The Browns are the Browns. I don't mean to keep ripping on the Browns. I know the Bears are the Bears, but
I agree with you. And it's the same thing like if the Raiders were to hire Champ Kelly. I like Champ Kelly, but it would probably be received the same way. Wait a minute. This guy, you hired a guy who was just part of a regime that got fired, that got blown out and they weren't good in Chicago. It's like that's what they would say in Las Vegas if you were to go out and hire Champ Kelly. So I get that.
I still like the idea of hiring a GM from a successful franchise. Now, I want that candidate to have more experiences outside that franchise. I think that's where I've come to realize maybe they were a little bit short-sighted on Ryan Pace because he was specifically just with the Saints. But I still like the idea of hiring somebody who's been around success, knows what success looks like, knows what a winning team looks like, feels like, and operates.
And Elliott Wolf qualifies as that. Plenty of success with the Packers. I actually, because I've said this with Brian Daboll too, like the fact that he went to the Browns and it didn't work out, there's lessons to learn there. And now he's with the Patriots. So it's a resume that I think would be pretty impressive. I'd like to know why he was passed on for the GM job all those years in Green Bay for Brian Gutekunst.
So many good candidates, though, didn't they? I mean,
they did, yeah.
An impressive scouting staff at one point. Reggie McKenzie, Elliott Wolf, John Dorsey, John Schneider. Come on.
Yeah. No, it was impressive. All right, well, we'll see where this thing goes in the coming days. Morocco Brown is interviewing today at Hallis Hall. This is Thursday as we record. And I don't know how you seems like you're getting a little antsy, Jahns. I'll say this. I would feel better about the whole thing if they had a GM in place by the end of the weekend. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but if you have a second interview scheduled with Matt Eberflus on Monday, and I don't know who you're picking in the Bills-Chiefs game, but that game could have ripple effects in this whole thing, not only for the Bears, but for other teams if the Bills lose. Because I feel like Brian Daboll's getting one of these 8 jobs. He has to.
Yeah. I guess, like,
and Leslie Frazier might too.
Like, here's my question about this. Like, a lot of these guys aren't in the play. Like, these GM candidates, their teams aren't in the playoffs. So, what? I like the process. Could it be sped up a little bit? Maybe. Mm-hmm. But, like, why is Morocco Brown pushed back now to today when he was scheduled for 2 days? I know there's a lot of moving pieces. Maybe some interviews run longer than others. But a lot of these guys, their teams aren't in the playoffs. So you wonder what's going on a little bit, just in terms, are they dragging their feet a little bit too much? Again, I like the process, but I think at this point, Adam, after 11 years covering this team, everything is fair to question. Everything.
Oh, yeah. Totally agree on that one. There, absolutely. All right, let's get to your book report. What did you get an A+?
Well, it's on The Athletic, so I passed.
Okay. Oh, it's a pass-fail grade.
Pass-fail grade, yeah.
If
So check it out on The Athletic.
If they didn't publish it, then it would have been a fail.
So I'm not going to bore you with the book report a little bit. I'm going to try to get through this, I don't know, promptly. I want to hear what you think about some of these things. So this isn't the book that George McCaskey mentioned. That's like my favorite part of this, is he highlighted this like Super Bowl blueprints book. But then I came across this Bill Polian game plan book, and literally in chapter 2, it outlines 11 guidelines for hiring the right coach. Like,
So, was he referencing the wrong book?
No. He referenced the current book.
But was this what he was really trying to get at, is my point.
Maybe. You would think, like, literally.
Well, this makes more sense, yes.
Yes. Chapter 2, deciding on the decision maker.
I mean, I would hope that's the book you're referencing. Yeah. So I think you referenced the wrong one.
Literally the first sentence of this chapter. Hiring the right head coach is the most important piece to building a successful football team. Thank you.
And that's the facts. That's 100% truth.
I mean, that's a bold argument.
Yeah. Yes. Get it right, and you have a good chance of being successful for a long time. Get it wrong, and you will likely find yourself going backward in a hurry. It will cost you two things you never get back: time and money. Those are the words of Bill Polian.
I agree. That's why, regardless of who gets hired first, they got to get the head coach right.
All right, let me throw some of this at you. So number 1 is organization. That ranges from how he organizes his playbook to his practice plans, from year-round staff assignments to his off-season program. Each of those areas and many more must be laid out in writing and explained completely, step by step, especially with a candidate who has never been a head coach before. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree. I mean, yeah, I agree with that.
The first thing I thought of was Mark Trestman planning out the calendar from his first day on the job to the Super Bowl parade held on Michigan Avenue.
Yeah. Well, how'd that work out?
Do you think he had a date book like me?
Definitely. Yes.
I imagine one of the big ones.
By the way, have you seen, not to change the subject, but have you seen this guy, Mike McDaniel, with the 49ers?
Oh, I saw you tweet about him.
The OC?
He looks fun.
He's funny Mark Trestman, I think. I think he's funny Mark Trestman. He just comes off as like this total...
Like, I would say cool Mark Trestman.
Yeah, maybe cool. I don't know. He looks like he should be playing like Halo or something, like on an Xbox. But he's the OC. I love his, by the way, I'm not making fun of him. I love his background. I was telling my wife about him, and like the conclusion was he's like the closest thing to me for an actual NFL coach, like this like nerdy football guy who doesn't have a playing background, and so that's probably why I'm drawn to him. But he's funny, Mark Trestman.
You want the football version of you, or the professional football coach version of you, to be hired. It's understandable.
Well, he'd be way better than me, that's for sure. I just, let me see if I can, first of all, you have to see him. Just me playing the audio really would not do it justice. But since this is a podcast, we could still try to do that. Let me see if I can bring it up here. So this is like highlights from his press conferences, like little cuts from it over the past year. Here we go.
Excited to be here. Equally excited for you guys to truly take in how physically imposing I am. So whenever you guys are ready to start, let's do it. Guys, again. What do we got? You guys got anything going on? Just hanging out in an auditorium? All right. Just gonna drag it out of me, huh? God, makes me do all the work. What do you guys got for me? I'm sorry. I apologize. All right, see you guys. So how we doing? What do we got? That's a cool question, because that's kind of how your pass game you want it to be. There's a rhythm and timing to everything. I have a history of smaller offensive linemen, but that's really, we haven't invested second-round draft picks into offensive linemen. We'd prefer everyone to be 400 pounds and 6'10", if you could engineer that. That's all. That was fun. See you guys.
That was fun. I mean, let's be honest. My only criteria for this thing is entertaining press conferences.
Yes.
So
work with us.
I don't care if he's a good head coach. I want him hired because that would be awesome every single day.
Have a guy come up there. What's up?
I think the Dolphins gave him an interview. So he's Kyle Shanahan's OC. And he's basically been everywhere with Kyle Shanahan. He's Kyle Shanahan's guy. I guess that would be one of your red flags that he hasn't really been.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, he's not a candidate. I just
you like him. He's your.
Oh, he's hilarious.
He's on your short list.
Well, he wasn't, but now he is. Now he's at the top. I put him ahead of Sean Payton now. Anyway, continue with the book report. I agree that, yes, you should have a plan, but I think and you pointed this out in your story, like, Mark Trestman had a plan. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Matt Nagy changed his plan every single hour, and that didn't work.
All the time. All right, number 2. This is actually the shortest section of the 11. Leadership. Does he have the philosophical approach, verbal skills, physical presence? So Mike McDaniel will be ruled out, according to him. No?
Yeah, probably.
Stability and courage to lead and motivate the coaching staff, the players, and the support staff.
Makes sense.
Number 3, communication. Does he have good verbal skills? Does he listen? Does he respond to questions in a thoughtful way? Or does he just tell people what to do? Is he open to suggestions? Can he interact with ownership, management, and other departments on their terms? Keep going.
Yeah.
Emotional stability. Can he function well under pressure from the players, staff, ownership, fans, and the press? Does he remain cool on the sidelines? Does he remain composed, organized, and does he take the lead at halftime? Does he use genuine anger as a motivational tool, or does he come apart when he's frustrated? I like this one. Is he coherent in his remarks to the players, staff, ownership, and the press after a loss? Does a loss stay with him too long?
That's a.
Yeah, I think well done. It'd be well said.
So not John Fox.
I actually thought about this now. I didn't put it in my article, but I think we've always thought, you and I have always thought, that the double doink stuck with Matt Nagy far too long.
Yes, that's a phenomenal point.
Right?
I think it also clouded their evaluation of how close they actually were.
Correct. I think exactly. You said that well. Never mind.
Because let me say this, because I think there's always been this assumption that they go to LA and win the next week because they had already beaten the Rams, and I've never thought that. And maybe someone will pull up some clip from 2018 where I thought maybe they could win, but I think but maybe it's in hindsight, knowing what we know now. But the reality is, when you actually look at what that team was doing and how much the defense benefited the offense, and even in that win against the Rams was one of Trubisky's worst games, actually. And I think the cold weather definitely played a factor. And I think it would have been a completely different game in LA. And didn't you have in your story that he broke his foot in that game? No, he tore the
oh, yes. Plantar fascia. Trubisky did.
In that playoff game. So he would not have been 100% the following week. I guess my point is, let's say the double doink goes in. It's a single doink, and it doinks in. What if they lose by 14 points the next week? Do they have a different outlook or evaluation of their own roster to realize that they weren't really as close as they thought they were? Does that make sense?
Absolutely it does.
Because look at the Arizona Cardinals right now. The story this week, right now, as they go into their offseason, they were 7-0, right, at one point? And they lost to the Packers. Very close game. Kyler got hurt. And they're thinking, oh, yeah, we're there. We're on the doorstep. But then they get to the playoffs and they realize, we're really not as close as we thought.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I feel like, one, the sting of that loss and what happened afterwards with the Today Show and everything, hung with Matt Nagy too long. And I think it also clouded their realistic view of their own team.
Number 5, vision. This is the most important quality of them all, Bill Polian writes. Does he have a clear picture of how he wants his team to look and play? Can he articulate it verbally and in writing? My first thought on this was John Fox knew exactly what he wanted his team to be the first 2 years.
Boring.
Yes.
Siesta.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
Ball control, run the ball, limit mistakes, play good
Boring.
defense. That changed with Trubisky. But, I mean,
A little bit.
a little bit. How often was like Trestman asked, what's your identity? Nagy was asked that like every single year, I feel like. What's
Nagy never had an identity. I mean, but I would hope that that's actually out of all the things you've read so far, I think that's the most important to me.
Well, Bill Polian would agree with you because that's what he said too.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I'm on board with Bill Polian now.
Yeah. Number 6. I think this is a noteworthy one. Strategy. Is he mentally prepared to make decisions on the sideline, or does he react? Does he have direct responsibility for key strategic decisions? In other words, is he the guy making them, or is he going to lean on somebody else? He's got to be the one to decide whether to go for it on 4th and goal.
Yeah. Take ownership of that. You know, but I still think it's okay to ask for input.
Of course.
But I would hope when you're doing that, you're thinking one step ahead. So like let's say it's like 2nd and goal to 7, right? You're thinking a couple downs ahead. All right, like if we get down inside the 3, are we going for it on 4th down? What do you think? You know, you can ask your offensive coordinator, what play do you want to run? But then, yeah, once you get to that down, there's not enough time. You better know what you're doing and do it with conviction.
Yeah, interesting part of this section. Polian writes, the head coach must be able to coherently explain the decisions he made during a game because the press obviously is going to have questions. Ownership is going to have questions too, and his explanation must demonstrate that he thought it all out.
I mean, I can't answer that. I mean, it's like, I don't know, horse racing.
7, flexibility. Can he adjust to changing trends in rules, personnel, opponent schemes, personality, or culture of players? Then I ask 2 rhetorical questions. First, can he change the nuts and bolts of his program to adjust to circumstances without changing his approach to the fundamentals? Secondly, can he be flexible and take advantage of circumstances, or does he have to buy someone else's program, lock, stock, and barrel?
Okay.
I think we saw that play out.
Yeah. So where are we at? 8?
8.
You want to get through the last ones? I think
You want to go.
No. What I think the point is, though, is that it is very, very hard to find a candidate who actually hits all 11 of these.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm actually trying to think of current head coaches, like who actually falls in that category.
So keep Brian Flores in mind on this, because there's a few more. Because if you listen to what I'm saying or you read this chapter of the book, like, is he a serious candidate or not? Just keep that in mind. Ability to judge talent. This was the longest chapter. This in terms of scouting and free agency.
Wait, can I stop you for a second and go back to because you brought up Brian Flores' name. I don't think he hits all these.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
There's a couple things in there that one is like, now I don't want to judge everything off what they say in the media because Bill Belichick doesn't say anything in the media. And I think behind the scenes, he probably does explain things clearly. But I don't know, like one thing, like Flores doesn't hit that one for me. What was the one? You had another one earlier too, like how he gets along with other people. Or is it just his way or the highway? That wasn't exactly how Bill put it in the book. But
Like,
you know,
you go back to like leadership, like motivating your coaching staff. Matt Nagy had a lot of changes. Brian Flores fired 2 offensive coordinators after 1 season each. Like, what's going on?
And you mentioned one of them, Chan. You know what? I was told that Chan Gailey actually left on his own because he wanted out.
Yeah. Why?
So, I mean, regard the semantics, I guess, like, you know, between fired or leaving on his own at that point doesn't really matter. But I actually think it does matter a little bit. Like, if he wanted to leave, and if he did, he probably left some money behind then too.
Those are questions that need to be asked.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this guy line is by far the longest. Some highlights. The coach has to be able to articulate to the scouting department exactly what he wants in the way of players. He mentions having an understanding of a salary cap, just how the roster changes every single year, to know what you're looking for out of certain players. But this line stood out to me. This is from Bill Polian. It's up to the GM to make sure he is on the same page as the head coach. The head coach has to worry about coaching the team. He has to worry about getting the team ready to play. He has to answer for everything that goes on. Everybody else in the building has to support him, and that's especially true from the beginning of training camp until the end of the season. We strove to make sure that when we went to training camp, we had a team that everybody felt good about.
I agree that talent is a huge part of it.
Number 9, public relations. Essentially, it boils down to, can he handle himself well in the media that he's forced to endure these days? I wouldn't disqualify someone if he wasn't good at that, as long as he was willing to work with a professional who would coach him up and help him through what really is a trial by fire every day. That is particularly true in Chicago. Now I don't feel bad about getting on the Bears for having those mock press conferences a little bit after reading that.
No, but you know, I think the key is to find a guy who can hit on as many of these as possible, because on that one too, you had Nagy was good at that. Nagy was good at that, and it didn't matter. And then,
You know, there's some unfamiliarity or infamiliarity, whatever that word is, non-familiar.
So you had it both ways.
I think with the way the Bears operate, and this is an underrated factor just for them, like the GM stays well out of the spotlight. George McCaskey does media twice a year. After the season, okay, maybe 3 times a year. After the season, when the new coach or GM is hired, and then with a few of us at the NFL annual meeting. Only times he talks. By far, the most consistent voice just in terms of how much this person talks is the head coach. Face of the team.
Oh, I thought you were done. You have another one?
11
How
of
long
these.
was this book? God.
There's 2
Just
more.
kidding.
Player respect. Does his knowledge, leadership, teaching ability, approach the squad morale and discipline, and his personal habits and dignity earn player respect? Do they look up to him? Is his approach to discipline fair? Does his personal bearing, conduct, and dignity, which encompasses work ethic, temperament, personal habits, etc., generate respect from the players? Not liking, but respect.
That's huge. Yeah, absolutely.
Number 11.
If you don't have your players' respect, you got no chance.
You're out. Which brings you, like, again, Brian Flores. Why does Tua not like you?
Yeah.
Why may not he respect you?
Fair question.
Doug Peterson. What the F happened with Carson Wentz?
Yeah, in that case, I wonder if it's a little bit more Wentz, but yeah, fair point.
Number 11. It boils down to one thing. Do you want this man as a standard bearer for your franchise? We know full well that we're all human beings, and we all have flaws, and we all have difficulties in our lives. We're not asking for St. Francis of Assisi here. The Catholic school kids in us should know that reference.
What? Liz, I missed it. Did you mention previous head coaching experience? Was experience really even talked about?
No, but I think if you go to strategy and vision, I think those highlight the need for experience.
Sure. I think, but I'm trying to think of it in terms of if this is the criteria the Bears are going.
No, it's not as exact as the Bill Parcells criteria for drafting quarterbacks, where he wants this many starts. You don't have that.
I'm just saying if there was one of those was must be experience, must have been through the wars, all that, I would be oh, well, then they're probably going to hire a guy who's done it before. In this case, I guess hearing all that, and I also read it this morning, not the book, your book report. I could see why Matt Eberflus got a second interview. From what I've heard about him, from what I've read about him, seems like his interview went well. I think you can assume that if he got a second one. One of the things that's really stood out to me about Eberflus, from what I've heard, is just he's almost got a little Lovie Smith to me defensively in some of the principles they believe in and what they constantly talk about, gang tackling.
That stood out to me from our conversation with Stephen Holder.
Yeah, and I found a video where he was mic'd up for a Colts practice that I watched, and he was just constantly talking about punching the ball out, every single time, punch the ball out. So I just going off those 11 things that you talked about in your piece, I can see why Eberflus checks a lot of the boxes. Because again, I don't know that you're going to find a guy who checks all 11, but you want to find a guy who checks the most.
One question I got from this is, okay, that has the head coach, but what about GMs? I would imagine Bill Polian wants to hear about some of these characteristics, some of these guidelines from the GM candidates. If I'm a GM candidate, here you go. Read The Athletic. Here's 11 guidelines that Bill Polian's looking for and what you should do at head coach.
Well, if there's a book on the things he needs from a GM, you can add it to your assignment notebook, and it is due Monday.
No, I'm done. Now, truth be told, I only skimmed the rest of the chapters, but number 2, obviously.
That's one. Yes.
But gosh darn it.
Give me the Cliff Notes.
I mean, you had a chapter deciding on a decision maker, and you lay out 11 of these things in bold print. Oh, makes for easy reading.
You read what you need to read to get the A on the test, and then come on, you don't need the rest. They give you these 400-word textbooks. You know what? This is a serious thing. One of my favorite classes I've ever taken was a weather and climate class at the University of Wisconsin, because God bless this professor. I wish I remembered his name. He was great. But he said, instead of going to the bookstore and buying this big-ass book, okay, you need to go to the copy store where there are, how many people were in the class? 50 or whatever, copies of a shortened version of the same textbook. He had gone through, he took out the stuff that we needed from this big textbook and condensed it into a 50-page bounded thing, kind of the Cliff Notes. He kind of made the Cliff Notes of the thing, because this is what you really need to know. And then every class was a chapter from his shortened thing. And if you actually read the thing, which instead of it being 20 pages a night was 5 to 7, if you read it, there was a quiz every single class. If you read it, you would get 100% on the quiz. He wasn't trying to trick you. He was just trying to get you to understand the information. And I'll tell you what, to this day, when I like watch the Weather Channel or I see like weather's coming in, like there are things I remember from that class that I don't remember half of stuff I learned in the journalism school.
Why didn't you become a weatherman?
Well, see, I could have used my journalism
job.
I could have, you know, you have to go to the school for that forever. You can't just, like, you have to actually become a meteorologist. You can't just
you just can't read the Cliff Notes.
You can't be like, yeah, I aced Weather and Climate 101 at Wisconsin, so can I be the weather guy?
I don't
here?
know. You know, these weather folks are wrong all the time.
Careful now.
I'm kidding.
So anyway, I appreciate what you did.
But yeah, there's a bunch of stories about Marv Levy in the Canadian Football League. That doesn't apply to today. That's my point.
It might, since this franchise is known for hiring coaches from the Canadian Football League. You might want to circle back and read those ones, Johnsy.
No, I'm trying to learn from the past.
Hopefully the Bears are too. That seems like a good way to end this thing. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. Read his piece on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge and Jahns, where you go to subscribe. And then you can read me at NBCSportsChicago.com. Get all my coverage there. Plenty more to come this week. YouTube, that's where we are. You can watch us on YouTube and subscribe. Hit the notification button. Oh, you got the JD sweatshirt on today.
Got it.
Obviousshirts.com. I got our Walking Bear hat. Check these out. The winter hats, I'm telling you, man, the winter hats are warm. It was so cold this morning. I was wearing the beanie when I went out of the house this morning.
8 degrees in Chicago.
It's got like a little like furry inlining. I'm telling you, it's like the warmest winter hat you can get. So obviousshirts.com. Find those all up there. Sweatshirts, the whole deal. T-shirts. We appreciate all your support. So we'll see what happens in the coming days. Don't you feel like this thing should heat up in the next few days?
Yeah. You might get an emergency podcast, but we're scheduled to come back on Tuesday.
Yeah.
After Eberflus's, I like that name, Eberflus. After his second interview on Monday. But hey, you never know.
Yeah.
Could have an emergency podcast Saturday. Kind of busy on Saturday, so Bears, maybe do it Sunday.
Well, what's on deck on the assignment notebook on Saturday?
Oh, it's right here, actually. Want to know? We got basketball at 11.
We got basketball. Okay.
Basketball at 11. We got baseball at 12:30, and we got soccer at 3.
Okay.
So Bears, George, wait until Sunday, when I only have baseball at 1:45 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think that now see, if you had this on your phone in your calendar, you could sync it to George's. You could send it to George. Say, this is my calendar. Sync it to yours. Don't screw up my basketball schedule. Whatever.
It's a good idea.
I'm just telling you. Can't do that with assignment notebook.
I'm going to regret saying I had one, but I like it. Don't care. Don't care. I can't do the Cutler voice. Don't care. No, don't care.
Anyway, who cares?
All right, we'll talk to you next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.
See ya.
Yeah, I think well done. It'd be well said.